Hank, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. And that Time Magazine thing was funny because it's the 100 most influential, but I'm not even the top 5 most influential in my house. There's not even close. Thank you so much for having me here today. I wanted to sort of tie into what some of the other speakers have. For starters, you know, David, I've always respected him so much. I mean, the battles he's fought, the things he's done. Pat, same thing. I mean, just amazing battles over long histories. And I'm not saying that, David, to harp on age issues, because I'm, you know, not spring chicken myself anymore, but have been doing this their entire lives. And what Hank talked about with the cynicism that, you know, pervades this, it's so true. A common thread, when you think about the different things that you've heard so far, though, and Michael was talking about it particularly, you really need to have a sense of urgency. You really do. Hank said something that I tell people quite frequently when I will speak to different groups, and I couldn't mean it more sincerely, and it couldn't be more depressing, to be quite frank with you. And that is that I have always felt that my father never thought in any moment that he was handing off to me a worse world than he had. And yet, when I look at the world that we have right now and the issues that we face and the excuses people come up with to never address them, to put them off and keep kicking it down the road, I fear to myself when I look at my small children that the world I'm handing them is not as good as I had. And that is a horrible feeling to have, absolutely horrible. And this isn't someone who's sitting there being a panic peddler. I just unfortunately feel it is the truth, and I look around me and I see it. And when I see it, so often it's because of people's lack of concern, people's disengagement, as Hank said, the cynicism that feeds it. But there's people that just do not get involved. They leave it to other people, and then, you know, Michael talked about it, David did, the moneyed interests then start pouring in, and then all of a sudden you sit there and you wonder why is our public policy not fitting what we average, normal people, the majority of us, are all feeling? And it's because we sit on the sidelines, we aren't as engaged, we do not have the influence, we do not have the money, and so these things happen. I see it in our office all the time because I am beyond puzzled that in a society that I feel is a horribly caring society, that really does think of other people, how is it that we have collectively said that if you're mentally ill, it's okay if we lock you up and throw you in jails? I mean, I could dress it up and say, oh, we don't mean it, we didn't mean this, and that. And that's a lie, an absolute lie. If you go down to Springfield, you'll deal with legislators who'll sit there and say, well, no, I didn't do that. I said, well, absolutely you did. When you defunded the program, that's the net effect, you moron. It goes away. But yet, I sit there and I stare day after day with people that are in my jail who are there because they're mentally ill. That's not my take on the world. I mean, are there some mentally ill people in my jail who've done some horrible things? Yeah, there are, but they're the vast, vast minority. The vast majority of them are good people who suffer from this illness. And they have nowhere to go, no one to take care of them. They commit offenses that clearly, in no one's idea or imagination, is in any way threatening the republic. And oh my God, we gotta get this guy off the streets, he's a master criminal. What did he do? He stole bar soap. Oh yeah, brilliant, and this is the place to put him. And the thing that is so sad, and this happens to me all the time, when I'm talking to the detainees, the mentally ill ones, particularly them, they will tell me that they're happy to be with me because this is the best they've ever been taken care of. And this is a jail. And under everyone's estimation, the largest mental health institution in the country is the Cook County Jail. That's embarrassing, it's outrageous. We should all hold our heads in shame. Absolutely should. And the people come to my place for care, and it's horrible, absolutely horrible. But think about it, that's what happens. Over 35% of my population is mentally ill. I mean, so at any given day, I have about 3,000 to 4,000 mentally ill people in my jail. People that are just there for minor crimes by and large, but the one common thread you can see with all of them is they have nowhere to go. There is no plan. When they leave me, they don't know what they're doing. When I go into a regular living unit that doesn't have mentally ill people in it, they're always talking to me about their cases and wanting to be on electronic monitoring or something like that. When I go to the mentally ill wards, and I have a lot of them, all they're talking about is, can you help me when I get out of here? They'll freely start talking to me about their case, and I always tell them, I go, listen, I used to be a state's attorney. I don't do that anymore, so I really don't care, what the facts are of your case. I just want to know what do you want to, what's going to happen to you when you leave here. And they just want someplace to go. And we don't have anywhere to go. And I know thinking thoughtful people would find that to be atrocious, but those are the harsh realities. And we need to think more of these people, the people that need us the most. That's where government should be, as David talked about. Not be shrunk, but be expanded with thoughtful programs. And I often tell people, listen, if you really just don't care about it from the humanity side, I don't really care, as long as you get there. And what gets you there is the fact that fiscally, it's outrageously stupid. That's true too. I mean, these people, when they leave with no plan, they will be back in my custody in a short period of time for something. It's horrifically expensive to keep doing that over and over and over again. And yet, people sense that that's what we are going to be doing. What we have done in my place, and we have been acknowledged as the leaders in the country now, is when people come in, I've hired people that interview everybody. We give the public defenders files so that they go in front of the judges, they can plead with the judges to not put them in the jail, but to put them in a mental health setting, maybe a nursing home. I tell them, put an electronic monitoring device on their leg, I'll monitor them. I've done for a handful of them, but we have some great judges, we have some mediocre ones, and then we have some horrible judges. Oh God, they're horrible. And they just don't care. As long as they put in their 5-6 hours and get their check, that's about it. So actually getting engaged and saying, listen, I'm going to take a risk, put this guy in a mental health setting, the sheriff will watch him, and let's just see what happens. They're more comfortable just locking them in my jail. But so we do this on the front end, we give them treatment inside the jail. My correctional officers now have for the last 5 years now, they get advanced mental health training. And think about that for a second, that I'm training correctional officers. People sign up to watch detainees. I train them in mental health issues because I have become the largest mental health hospital. And because of that, we see all sorts of incidents that would have ended up being problems, aren't problems anymore because they're trained in it. And then the other thing we finally did is we started doing discharge planning for them. So that when people are leaving, we have some type of plan. It doesn't mean we're actually connecting them to something, because once again, if there's no programs, you can't connect them to nothing. But at least there's some thought put into it. And I have 2 new doctors that work for me, which has never been done in the sheriff's office, who solely focus on working with my mental health population. So we've taken this thing head on. We've pissed off a lot of people, and I plan on doing a lot more of it. So we aren't going away on this one, because as I say, when you sit there and talk to these people, it breaks your heart, absolutely breaks your heart. You know they shouldn't be in here, you know it's wrong, you know it's a mental illness. They don't choose to be like this, and yet this is what we're doing. And so whether it's that, or what I see in a lot of towns all around the county these days, where, once again, just complete lack of concern, where I'm going into towns, I mean, think about it for a second. If this happened in the city of Chicago, I mean, my God, it'd be all over the national news, it'd be such outrage. In the town of Robbins, for 20 years, okay, for 2 decades, they did not investigate cases when women were raped, okay? So women were getting raped all the time. They just didn't investigate them. And we found that out when we found out there was over 200 rape kits that were sitting in their evidence room they had never done a thing with. And then once we started opening up those cases, we found out there were many more people who had been sexually assaulted, and nothing had been done. Just horrible. And so we've opened up all these investigations, but unfortunately the statute of limitations is gone on most of them. And so we're struggling through that. But once again, who cares? It's just poor people. Really, collective, rolling of the shoulders and groan, it's not a big deal. I mean, just think if that happened in our own communities. It would be such outrage. But yet, in certain communities, the fact that there's literally no justice doesn't seem to upset too many people. So whether I'm dealing with those issues in Robbins, or my continuing struggles with the town of Harvey, where at any given moment you don't know who's on what side of the law, and so we're trying to go down the middle so that we can actually just take care of the citizens, and whatever's going on with some of the corruption issues, we'll try to work on that, but let's just try to solve some of these homicides from these families who have lost their children. It's just, it's heartbreaking. And I see more and more of that, because the finances of a lot of these towns are suffering like you wouldn't believe. And the most expensive budget item is the police. And if they have fire, fire's the next thing. And so when they can't fund things, that's what they cut. And they don't fill positions, and it's horrible. And so I'm not, I have a tendency to be a complete downer, not just places like this, parties everywhere. I am, trust me, I am just a complete downer. But it's to people like you, I want to just impress upon you that there are these issues and there is this need for a sense of urgency. I had an interview with WBEZ last week, and it was pretty comical because they were talking about a couple different issues, but one of them was, and he was a nice guy, he was just sort of hedging around a little bit. He said, Tom, there's a notion that you don't play well with others. And I was like, that's true. Actually, you're right. And he's like, well, so you don't deny that? I go, no, I don't deny it. I go, absolutely. I go, I will agree to meet with people and talk with them once or twice, but when it becomes abundantly clear that they're going to committee and task force me to death, then that sends me the signal that this is not someone who's serious about it. Because I was sentenced down to Springfield for 11 painful years in the legislature, and when I was down there, whenever I come up with a new idea that I thought was a progressive idea, that was something that we should get involved with, it always found its way into a committee, an interim committee that never had any intention of meeting, and that's where the majority of my bills would end up. And so I understood, I learned from Springfield that that's the code word for people who just want to push problems off. And my point to you is that we can't do that. I mean, most of these things are really straightforward. They don't need committees, they don't need the debate society. We just need people who are willing to take a risk, move forward on things, and let the chips fall they may. The beauty for me, though, is I often tell people, what most politicians live in fear of is being unelected. Oh my God, that would be the best thing that ever happened to me. I can go get a real job, not be woken up at 2 in the morning all the time with some insanity at the jail. I'd have a normal life of some nature. And so for me, it's just not something that I'm obsessed with. I'm not obsessed with what my next office I may or may not run. I could care less. And for most politicians, that disturbs them because it doesn't fit the normal mode where it's like, I'm planning this move and that move. I just don't do that. I've been the sheriff now 7 years. I've enjoyed the hell out of it because unlike in Springfield where I had to get permission to do things and I had to get clearance from my own party, which I fought more often than not, here when we come up with good ideas, we do them. We don't wait. When people were being thrown in the street back in 2008 and I knew it was absolutely wrong what was happening when they were being foreclosed and dumped in the streets, I didn't need a committee, I didn't need a bill, I didn't need permission. I just stopped evicting people. I said, I'm not doing this anymore. We're not going to do this until we're protecting people's rights. And I know factually I would not have been able to do that in other environments. Just absolutely, I know that. And so for me, I love what I'm doing right now. Most of my family thinks I'm completely out of my mind because I still like what I'm doing. But it's one of those things where I will continue doing this to push these issues. This job allows me to do it, and so I will continue to love it. But I just want to, parting word, please, 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 be engaged, but do it with a sense of urgency. Do not take no for an answer, and make sure you're holding people accountable, because otherwise you'll be lied to forever. Thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions? I only take true and false questions, though. Yes?
I have a question. Why are the visiting facilities for people who want to visit incarcerated at Cook County so dismal and really a disgrace, dehumanizing both for the prisoners and those who want to visit and support whoever they are, whether they're friends or family? They've been like that for at least 4 years over the period in which I've had a chance to go to try and use them.
Well, I mean, it's not much solace to you, but frankly, what it was when I first got there were better. But to be honest with you, I couldn't have made it worse, so that's
well,
not saying.
Why haven't you improved it?
I have. I mean, if you go into Division 11, Division 8, the new ones, we actually have video visitation going on there. They're all clean, and it's very nice and neat. But there's a lot of people that don't like the video visitation. They want the ones with face-to-face. The problem is most of the buildings there are all very old buildings, and so the visitation facilities that were set up decades ago. And so there's been some efforts I've made to try to work on that, but I'll tell you, my struggle I've had frequently is trying to figure out what to do with the children. I want people to stay connected to their children, but the environment of the visiting rooms are horrible because they're these narrow rooms, there's no real divider between people. And so you're hearing people's conversations from one side to the other, and frequently we have problems where somebody has both of the girlfriends show up at the same time, and we have problems then, and we have fights, and you have kids in there. And so I thought about maybe setting up a sort of daycare center for the kids, but then people were mad at me because I was not having the kids visiting their father. or their mother, and so I had to back off of that. So I have given it some thought. I do apologize that it's not in the best of conditions. It's not exactly how I would want it to be. We've had a heck of a time trying to get the funding to revamp these very old structures. But in the new ones that I've had done since I've been there, or had the ability to, they're very new, very state-of-the-art, but now I'm getting pushback from people that, and we just talked about today actually at the jail, that a lot of people don't want to do video visitation. So now I'm trying to put in an incentive because they're not wanting to go into the divisions that have video visitation. And so I'm sort of a little bit torn there on how to pull that one off. Because video visitation's a more normal environment, you can hear each other, you're not yelling through a little hole. That we've had to even close up the damn holes there, because what we were finding out is the normal screens that you had there in the windows, the holes in them, what was happening is visitors would sneak straws in that would have cocaine primarily inside the straw. We obviously couldn't find it when we did any type of search, and they'd slip the straw through the hole and they'd blow the cocaine into the other person's nose. And we had a lot of that going on. So we had to change the holes so the holes you can't get anything through the holes. So now when people talk through, they can't hear as well though. And then the phones that we were using, whenever we had someone that got upset about something, which happened frequently, they would smash the phones. And so then we got away from the phones to just use the hole, but now the holes aren't all the way through. So I'm not trying to say it's impossible. It could and should be better. It just is complicated.
I have confidence you could improve it for not very much money.
Well, I'm open to suggestions, and seriously, if you have some. If you have some specifically as to different divisions, let me know, because all the divisions have their little quirks to them. Yes, anybody else?
Yeah, I run an organization called Uline, and we go out and we help the guys that come from your facility get jobs and or schooling. And recently, by going online, now you have to actually submit, some type of form in order to go visit somebody.
Mm-hmm.
But I've noticed within the last couple of weeks, and I have like 5 different people doing this, the internet is down. The word won't go through. It says that you can't do it at this time. So
Does it say why you can't?
Excuse me?
Does it say why you can't do it at that time? Is it because it's
no,
down?
What it says is this number, it'll send you to another place, which will go back to the original one, and you go to another one, it goes back to the original one.
And so, and that's the number that's on the screen then, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I apologize. One of the things that we're actively doing now, and I can't emphasize enough to you, the jail was a mess when I got there. So a lot of issues, big issues, small issues, and so on. So some of the issues I haven't maybe got to as quickly as others, but I'll be honest with you, the one thing I always tell people, you'll never be able to look me in the eye and not get me to get me to think, well, I can give more. I moved my office in day one into the jail. That's where I'm at virtually every day, and I'm usually there 12 hours every day without fail. And then I'm on the phone on the weekends and at night and stuff. So I will mention that to you is that it isn't because I'm screwing around that I'm putting in an 8-hour day and I'm on the golf course. I literally have no interest. It's my job and my family. I never go anywhere, I never travel, and no one ever sees me anywhere. It's just that. It's a boring, boring life, but I mean, I'm very passionate about it, so I do that. One of the things that we started working on about a month ago, something like that, was the phones, because we have found, and you'll love this story, this is a beaut, there was too many phone numbers out there, and so I was always obsessed with this customer service notion that I wanted parents and families and friends who call there to be treated as they should, almost as if we're in a doctor's office that wants you as a patient, and so they treat you with thoughtfulness, they give you times that are realistic. When people used to come to bond people out, we used to make them wait out in the snow, which I thought was a little bit troubling. The other part of it was we'd have them waiting forever. And I said, well, now why can't we put up a board that tells people how long? And mind you, it's never as straightforward as you think when you're trying to move people. But the whole theory was to make it more customer friendly. Well, then we got into the phones. We found out there's all these numbers, and some of them don't go to anywhere. And so we are presently right now removing loads of them and trying to steer people toward more. And just this past week, I got a letter from a woman, and she was a little upset, but we talked to her, and she wasn't quite as up afterwards. She got some booklet or something like that for phone numbers for sheriff's office. She was trying to find records. She calls records on 800 number, and it was a sex line. And so we, of course, thought she misdialed, so we dialed it, and it is a sex line. And so I was not pleased, but we then subsequently found out the booklet was handed out by the FOP, and it's a union organization that they handed out as a service with all these numbers, and it was just a wrong number. So we're trying to get hold of them to remove it, but it reinforced to us that we have numbers going all over the place, and underlying it, a very long answer to your short question is that we're working as hard as we can on the customer service part of this, and we still have a ways to go, and we need help. And so as far as that site goes, I'll definitely have someone look at it. I'll call them when I get in the car and I head home tonight. I'll call them and tell them that it's not working well.
It's repetitious to nowhere.
That's what I mean.
You can't sign in.
And see, that's what I often tell people in my staff. I go, listen, if I was just mailing this thing in and putting in 2-hour days, and it was like, hey, cost of doing business. When I put in as many hours as I do, I don't want to have things like that going on, because the public will sit there and think that's a reflection of me, that I don't care, and that's okay with me, and it drives me insane. When you put as much in as I put into this thing, to have things like that that give people a bad taste in my office, I feel it upsets me a great deal. And you have every reason to feel jerked around, because that's what's happening. And just institutional incompetence is not okay. So I will get on that, I promise you, tonight. Once we get into the IT world, I sort of have a big deficit there. So I would assume we could fix this thing quick. But it is an area, not the particular one, but it is an area that we are definitely working on right now.
Yep.